Has this ever happened to you, where you leave the physio with a list of exercises, and for the first few weeks, everything appears to go great? You're moving better, the pain's reducing, until out of nowhere, the pain begins to return. So you stop, you rest, and you allow things to settle, before slowly getting back into the rehab again, although this time, moving a little bit more carefully. Gradually things start to build up, before all of a sudden, that pain returns. And it doesn't take long for you to get stuck in this rehab, flare-up, rest and repeat cycle. And after going through that a number of times, it's only natural to worry, is there something wrong with your body? Are you doing something wrong in the rehab? Well, I want to tell you that this pattern, this exact cycle, has a specific cause, and it's one that everyone is overlooking. And it's exactly what we're going to break down in this video. To help explain this, I want you to picture your dream house. Close your eyes and visualize it if you need to. I want you to picture the size of it, the shape of it, how many windows there are, the color of the door, the color of the bricks, everything you can see in front of the house and around the house. Because there's one thing I can guarantee that you're not picturing, and that is the foundations. This invisible structure that lives underneath the surface. This critical thing that the entire house depends on. Every wall, every window, every brick above the ground is sitting on top of that foundation. Now I want you to imagine someone building your dream house without building the foundations first. For the first few weeks, it would look like they're making incredible progress. Bricks would go down, walls would go up, this house would begin to take shape. But as the house gets bigger and the load increases, cracks are bound to appear. And they may think that they've built it wrong. Knock a few bits down, add some reinforcements, use different bricks, add more scaffolding. But they are always going to get to that same tipping point where the house begins to fail. If this sounds familiar, it's because this is exactly what is happening with that cycle that I described at the start of this video. There isn't a problem with the house. There isn't something missing in the way that it's being built. The problem is, it's a house being built without a foundation. And therefore, no matter how carefully you try and build it, the load will always get too much and the cracks will always begin to appear. So the problem isn't what's wrong with the body or what's wrong with the rehab plan. The real question is what's going on in the foundation. And this is the really exciting thing, because we as human beings, in the way that we function, have a foundation. The problem is, it's just one that our entire medical system, even myself for the first few years of my career, have been overlooking. And that is your nervous system. The brain, the spinal cords, the nerves, the way all of that communicates with our body. It controls every single part of how we function. It's this invisible thing that sits underneath the surface that supports every single aspect of how our body works. And if that foundation is working well, if it's working as it's supposed to, we refer to that as a well-regulated nervous system. But our nervous system can adapt and change depending on so many things that we put it through. It can become dysregulated, which means it's unable to cope with the stress of what we're trying to put on top of it. And let me be clear, that's not weakness. That's not a failure on your part. That's a system that needs fixing at a specific level. The problem is, nobody in our medical system is paying any attention to it. Doctors, physios, osteos, PTs, we are all taught to assess and focus on how to build the house, the physical stuff. Nobody is trained to look at what's going on under the surface and understand, is your nervous system working as well as it needs to before we dive into rehab? And we can see this playing out in real time. Two people with the exact same injury, having the exact same rehab plan, having two completely different experiences. One getting back to sport within 6 weeks, the other still being in pain and on the sideline 6 years later. And for reference, I have 2 physio degrees, a Bachelor's of Science in Physiotherapy and a postgrad in Sports and Exercise Medicine. And not one single clinical placement or single lecture was the nervous system even part of the equation. I was never taught to even consider, is the nervous system functioning well enough for the rehab plan that we're discussing? I wasn't taught how to look for it, or if there's a problem in it, how to fix it. And although I've referred to it as this invisible layer, that doesn't mean that it's unfixable. Yes, we can't see it in the same way that we can see a broken bone on a scan. But a nervous system that's not working as well as it should has a specific pattern. The pain presents with a specific signature. We just need to know what to look for. So the signs that can indicate that a person's foundation, nervous system, isn't working as well as it should are these. A combination of any of these things is our foundation telling us that it's struggling to cope with what we're asking it to do. And if there's no clear medical cause for the pain, if we've had scans, MRIs, X-rays that haven't found any damage, and people haven't been able to identify a clear mechanical pattern to the pain, all of that should focus our attention on the foundation. And this is the bit I need you to hear. Understanding that the foundation is the issue is the hardest bit. When we know that that's the area that needs attention, everything else gets so much easier because we have a clear scientific roadmap on how to help the nervous system work better, how to solidify the foundation. And when we get that right, building the house, going through the rehab plan, is so much easier. And to illustrate this, I want to share a story. This is Yona, who came to see me after suffering with pain in both of his feet for 2 years. He'd seen multiple physios, multiple sports doctors, surgeons, podiatrists, and had multiple MRIs. He had spent years doing rehab, exercises, trying to build the strength, mobility, function of his feet. But despite all of this hard work, he was unable to stand without pain, let alone walk and run. So the first thing we did is look for these key characteristics that his foundation, the nervous system, was the thing that was holding him back. Together, we identified 4 key things. The first is that the pain was symmetrical, obviously. It also appeared in different areas of his feet without any clear cause. It got worse when he was stressed, and he spent almost every waking second thinking about his pain, researching his pain, worrying about his pain. And without any clear evidence of damage on his scans, and no improvement in all of the years of rehab he had done, all of that pointed us towards his nervous system being the key driver behind his pain. So together we worked on optimizing and regulating his nervous system, teaching it how to function and giving him a more solid foundation to make use of all the strength that he'd spent years building. And 12 weeks after our first session, he ran a 5K with 0 pain. And in those 12 weeks, I didn't give him any special exercises. I didn't give him a new way of trying to build the house. All we did is give him a better foundation to put that house on top of. And he got to his end goal so much faster. And I share this because sometimes people are so resistant to stop focusing on the rehab and focus on the nervous system. And I get it. It feels like if you're not getting stronger, you're not making progress. But sometimes taking 1 step back to take 2 steps forward is the right thing to do. So the next obvious question is, what does working on the nervous system actually look like? What does strengthening and building this foundation involve in practice? So I've broken all of that down into a video which you can access somewhere up here. And this is exactly what I did with Yona and what I do with all of my one-to-one clients. And it's not just theory, it's proven neuroscience. And it's exactly what we need to do to help strengthen the nervous system so that the rehab can do its job of making you stronger, more mobile, and better able to get back to the sport that you love. Before I wrap up this video, I want to leave you with one thing. If the foundation is the problem, and it's the nervous system that needs some work, it doesn't mean that all the years you've spent building the house and doing the rehab have been wasted. What it means is that to get the very most out of that work, or that hard work that you've already put in, and build this rock-solid, resilient house that can weather any storm, we need to take a step back and focus on this invisible thing that sits underneath it. Because a house that's being put together or held together by scaffolding is always going to come unstuck at some point. So the best thing we can do is take 1 step back, rebuild the foundation, and then get back into sport feeling resilient, strong, without any risk or worry of a flare-up. That is the ideal place for any athlete to be.